Hi, I wanted to post my response to the debate tonight. And the first thing that jumped out at me, if you were watching the commentary after the debate, is all the commentators they jumped to back and forth. Not a single one of them mentioned Ron Paul. They mentioned all the other five candidates, and no one dared utter his name, even though when the candidates were asked about the person on stage that influenced them the most, Ron Paul's name came up the most. So the candidates pointed to Ron Paul as being a strong influence, and the reporters just didn't get it. They just didn't understand. And if you followed the Yahoo comments, social media, Google Plus, Facebook, and pretty much anything on the internet, any internet polls of who do you think's winning so far, Ron Paul's killing it, but they just don't mention him at all. And they talked about Mitt Romney not laying a hand on Newt, but the problem is that it wasn't Newt that was getting beat up by Mitt Romney. It was Mitt Romney that got beat up. But the thing is that Ron Paul was, I think, wrecking Newt Gingrich. And Newt Gingrich did not respond at all to the idea that it was taxpayer money that Freddie Mac funneled to him. I mean, he said, I didn't lobby for them, but he didn't deny the fact that they were paying him bailout money. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I put some notes down while I was listening to the debate, things I wanted to comment on. First off was socialized medicine and individual mandates. And, right now we have socialized medicine in America. Not only in Massachusetts do we have an individual mandate, but we have socialized medicine for our military, government-run hospitals and stuff. And you've heard that. I mean, if you are watching Jon Stewart, he said, oh, we do a pretty good job of socialized medicine for the military, and maybe we should have the government run all military. I mean, have the government run all of our medical care and all our hospitals. And I grew up in the military, so I'm pretty familiar with how that works, and it is pretty awful. And I didn't know how bad it was until after my family, got to go to private doctors once my dad was out of the military. My sister broke her arm, and we had to go back 3 times before they were like, oh yeah, her arm's broken, we're going to give her a cast. When you go to get a physical, you have to do it in a allotted time, and they just herd you in like cattle. So there's all these kids lined up, and then you have the naked portion of your physical where you put your clothes down on some chairs, then walk behind this curtain, and they do check you out, and then you go put your clothes on, and then you stand in your line. And it is not a wonderful thing, this socialized medicine. And if you ever go to the emergency room there, I mean, it's crazy packed all the time, because you can't really set an appointment and go see your doctor. Everything's an emergency. You have the sniffles, your neck hurts, you sleep wrong, you go to the emergency room. So socialized medicine is pretty awful. Just from my opinion, I speak to it from a first-hand basis. Next, they talked about consistency and conservative, and Ron Paul made the point I don't think anyone can challenge my consistency, and they're up there trying, especially Bachmann and Santorum. The fact of the matter is, Bachmann, I would agree that she's been pretty consistent, but the problem is she says wacky things pretty frequently. First she says Herman Cain's 999 plan, if you turn it upside down, is 666, and then she's kissing his butt, oh, I miss him and I wish he was saying 999, and we got to do the win-win-win plan. It's man, talk about consistent. That's great. And Santorum, when you look at, he talks about things that he won while he was in the House and in the Senate, But the fact of the matter is he did vote for increasing government scope and power on more than one occasion. You look at his voting record, and you know, he makes himself to be out to be a conservative and really consistent, but he's willing to compromise it if if the price is right and he thinks that it's good for him politically. Another thing that they talked about was national security and this whole mess with Israel. And I actually like Rick Perry's comment that the media is blowing this out of proportion. But obviously the guy that had the best line was Ron Paul. Like, leave it alone. It's while that's technically true, it's none of our business. I like the idea that people are like, oh, people in Washington shouldn't tell us how to live our lives. It's too far away. They just don't get it. And then the candidate's saying, like, I understand what it's like to be a part of the mainstream and part of Main Street and society. I run a business and everyone's trying to get their creds being middle America, but none of them have any creds living in the Middle East. And one of the silliest things I heard, or I thought was said in the debate, was saying that it's America's policy that's making the Middle East bad. I was like, man, that is really, really stupid. I mean, the Middle East was definitely screwed up and having conflict and fights well before America even existed. And, if you really look at history the way like Newt says he's a historian and study why you never see Middle East leaders wear ties except for Israel. So it goes back to the Crusades, and the tie is a Western fashion thing. And before the Crusades, the Holy Land, or Israel, Jerusalem, was Muslim controlled, and it was a pretty peaceful city. After the Roman Empire fell and that area was liberated, pretty peaceful until the West decided, oh, we're going to attack them and loot and have this crusade. So the idea that the Middle East is crazy because of American policy is pretty silly to me. Another big thing that I noticed just in the debate in general was the whole rebuttal thing, and the moderators just not moderating. I mean, they're like, all right, we have this light system, and as far as I could tell, Ron Paul was the only person that abided by that. I mean, he didn't interrupt or go over, and I just thought the debate was kind of out of hand. And Rick Santorum, like, I want to respond to that because she referenced something that I was a part of. Really? And then they're like, oh, okay, Rick Santorum wants to respond. And so I thought the format was pretty sloppy, and didn't really enjoy the whole 30-second rebuttal and the rebuttals of rebuttals. And I was just like, man, just ask questions, debate them, and if someone mentions you, you get to talk back. It's just kind of silly. And one thing that stands out on that is no one dares challenge Ron Paul on any issue. I mean, they might say he's kind of kooky on his foreign policy issues, but they can't challenge him on anything on monetary policy. I mean, he knows his stuff, and the proof is in the pudding and what happened in our economy. So that's all the comments I have. You guys have a Merry Christmas.